Hi, everyone. I wanted to offer a little bit of feedback on some recurring issues I saw in Literary Analysis 1 on fiction. Wanted to say good job and congrats on finishing your first essay. We are moving on to poetry next, and you will write an essay similar to the one you just did for poetry and then one for drama. So, a few things that I did see repeated that I wanted to address, and I tried to make comments on most of your essays regarding a lot of this, but it was a universal enough thing that I thought I'd do a short video just to address some of it. So, there are some peculiarities with MLA formatting and the way we write literary analysis essays. And I did record a video on MLA formatting, and that is something that I do want you to take a look at if you haven't yet. Most of you did a pretty good job with your MLA formatting, but take another look if there were any comments on what you were doing that needed a little bit of tweaking. Remember, it's all double spaced. There's some components that you have on the top left margin and some issues with spacing. MLA is pretty vanilla, pretty plain. It doesn't like a lot of flash, so unbolding your titles, making everything the same font size, and your works cited is always the last page that appears in your essay. It is paginated separately. It doesn't mean you need to attach it separately, but it should be the last page of your essay. And if you are only citing one source, as most of you did, you can call it work cited since it's singular. And if you're citing multiple sources, as you will for your last essay, it will be work cited. A few things as far as titles. Remember, your title is the first thing that I read, and it is something that should reveal what your essay is about, and that should go beyond the title of the essay or the short story that you're analyzing. So if I read a stack of papers all on Lucis Naturae, nothing differentiates them. I want something that pulls me in, makes me want to read it. So let your essay title get the attention of the reader. Let it reveal, partially at least, either the author you're analyzing or the work you're analyzing. And let it also reveal or hint at what your thesis is about. So if you are covering something like symbolism, have that in your title. And be sure, I know sometimes we just use placeholder text. Be sure that if you've just called it Lit Analysis Essay 1, that you change it to something more revealing, more attention getting. So that's number one. Number two would be points of view. In writing, we have three primary points of view. We have first, second, and third. First person point of view is I, me, my. It is my story. And a lot of the pieces that we read, especially in fiction, are told in first person point of view. It is that person's story. When we read in first person point of view, we automatically are more connected to it because we're reading it as though it were happening to us, and it becomes more personal. However, when we write about literature, we want to remove ourselves. We want to formalize our diction a bit. And so we get rid of things like I believe, I think, I argue. So try to remove yourself completely from the writing that you do. If it's your essay and your argument or your thesis, I will assume that these are your beliefs and these are your feelings by the evidence that you use to support your thesis statement. So you can get rid of I believe, I think, I know, I will be arguing this, etc. Additionally, we get rid of second person point of view, which is you and your. And I will occasionally let the second person uses fly in your introduction if you're trying to create a scenario or have us think about something briefly, but try especially to get rid of it throughout the rest of your essay because it is more formal. It's a direct address to the reader, and rarely does it work in a literary analysis. Literary analyses are a little bit more formal, as I said, so we want to elevate our diction a little bit. I don't want you to write artificially phony. I want you to sound like you, but slightly more posh, more polished, more formal. And I don't mean posh as in snooty. I mean as pretend that you are presenting your paper at a symposium or a conference, or that you're reading it to a panel of English professors. So you want it to sound a certain way. You want it to sound as though you've read the piece maybe multiple times, you have a thesis statement that is arguable, and that you're defending it with the evidence that you've provided. So get rid of your first and second person points of view, write in third, so he, she, they, them. Refer to the reader as the reader, refer to the author as the author, and the characters within. Also remember that just because an author writes a story does not mean that that is their story. Most of what you read is fiction, meaning it's not true, it's been made up, it could be based on real life, but it is not factually true. It's not historically true necessarily. So don't presume that the author is writing about his or her own life, because authors create characters and stories all the time. We did learn in things like Charlotte Perkins Gilman that her story was based on her own experience, but the story that she wrote is not necessarily her precise story. It's a story that she wrote to underscore the importance of the issue, but it's not necessarily her specific story. A few things with grammar, just note your apostrophe usage. Remember that apostrophes are used primarily to show possession, so ownership of something. Rarely are they used to show plurality or more than one. And I noticed a little bit of that. And present tense, we write about literature in the present tense because we assume that literature will keep living beyond us, that people will pick up these stories, these poems, these plays, and continue to read them. So we use present tense verbs when we write about them rather than past tense verbs. That's just a little nuance of writing about literature. And I think that's primarily what I saw. A little bit of subject-verb agreement. Make sure that your subject of the sentence agrees with your verbs, but that was more minimal than the other things I saw. So take a look at your perspective, first person, second person, third person. We want to err with third person for these essays. Make sure your title is indicative of what you're writing about, and your thesis statement, it pulls us in. Make sure that you're writing in present tense and that you're writing in a slightly more formal diction and tone. And also know that you do have revision options. You will have the chance to revise all but the last essay that you submit, just because of timing of when grades are due. But if you get your grade back on this, you're not happy with it, you want to resubmit it, you are welcome to do that. I usually have a stop due date that's in April, maybe a week or two before classes end, that I will put up on Blackboard at some point, but you will be allowed to revise essays if you so choose. And if you're going to take that option, I encourage you to seek out the Online Writing Center, Zoom with one of the writing tutors, or contact me and we can get together one-on-one via Zoom and talk about the essay. So those are some options for you and some tips on writing your next draft for poetry. All right, let me know if you have questions. Thanks.